Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something. When you put your trust in God, patience stops feeling like a burden and starts becoming your secret weapon. You see, most people break down in the waiting room of life. They panic, they rush, they settle for less than what they were destined for. But when your faith is rooted in the one who cannot fail, you can stand still while the storm is raging. You can smile while the clock is ticking. You can rest while others are restless, because you know that delays are not denials and waiting is not wasted. The God you serve is never late, never early. He's always right on time. When you have complete faith in God, patience stops being something you struggle to manufacture on your own. It becomes something that flows out of the deep confidence that God is in control, that He has already gone ahead of you, and that nothing is happening outside of His plan. Patience becomes easier when you stop looking at your situation through the lens of panic and start looking at it through the lens of promise. When you have faith, you can rest even when storms are raging, because you know the one who holds the winds and the waves in His hands. And so many times in life, we find ourselves restless, anxious, fidgeting in the waiting room of destiny. We want the breakthrough right now, the blessing right now, the answer right now. But when you trust God fully, you understand that delays are not denials. A delay is simply God setting the stage, arranging the actors, preparing the right timing so that when your miracle arrives, it will be undeniable that it was His hand at work. Faith teaches you that waiting is not wasted. Every second you spend waiting in faith is an investment in your future testimony. And there is a difference between waiting with worry and waiting with worship. Worrying says, what if it doesn't happen? What if God forgot about to me? What if I miss out? But worship says, I trust you, Lord. Even when I can't trace your hand, I can trust your heart. Even when I don't understand the route, I know you are leading me somewhere good. That's the kind of faith that transforms patience into peace. Suddenly, the waiting doesn't feel like punishment. It feels like preparation. And think about the farmer who plants a seed. He doesn't drop the seed into the soil and expect a harvest in the next hour. He waters it. He tends the ground. He keeps believing in the unseen process happening beneath the soil. That is the power of faith. Patience becomes easy when you realize God is working underground behind the curtain in the unseen places. Just because you don't see it doesn't mean it's not happening. Just because it hasn't surfaced yet doesn't mean it's not growing. Faith makes you hold on when others would give up, because you understand that your season of harvest is scheduled by the hand of God Himself. And you see, when you don't have faith, waiting feels like torture. But when your faith is anchored in God, waiting becomes training. It builds your endurance. It strengthens your character. It stretches your vision. Faith tells you that God's delay is developing something in you that the blessing alone could never give you. Sometimes the blessing is not the destination. It's the transformation that happens inside of you while you wait. And patience isn't about doing nothing. Patience is about standing firm, about praising while you wait, about preparing yourself for what you've prayed for. Faith gives you the strength to keep showing up, to keep walking, to keep believing, even when the evidence doesn't match the expectation. Patience without faith is fragile. It breaks under pressure. But patience with faith is unshakable because it's rooted in the eternal promise of God. And there will be times where life looks like it's falling apart, when doors slam shut, when prayers seem unanswered, when people walk away, when dreams feel delayed. In those moments, patience can only survive if it's fueled by faith. Faith reminds you that God's plan is bigger than your plan. His vision is wider than your vision. His thoughts are higher than your thoughts. Faith whispers, hold on, it's not over. Hold on, God is still working. Hold on, your story is not finished yet. And when you hold on to that whisper, patience flows like a river through your soul. And faith teaches you how to endure seasons of silence. Because sometimes God is quiet. Sometimes he doesn't respond to your prayers the way you expect. But silence is not absence. Silence is not neglect. Silence is often the sacred space where God is working on something so big, so powerful, so transformative that if he explained it now, you wouldn't be able to handle it. Faith gives you the ability to sit in the silence and still trust that he is near, that he has not forgotten, that his timing is perfect. And think about the stories of old. How many people had to wait on God's promise? Abraham waited decades for the son that was promised. Joseph waited years in prison before stepping into his destiny. David waited through battles, betrayals, and loneliness before sitting on the throne. Each of them had moments when patience was tested, but faith carried them through. And just like them, you are not waiting in vain. Your patience is producing something. Your patience is positioning you. Your patience is proof that you trust the one who promised. And patience is not about passivity. Patience is active trust. It is choosing to believe when everything around you suggests otherwise. It is speaking life when circumstances look dead. It is declaring victory even while you are standing in the middle of a battlefield. Faith makes patience easier because it shifts your focus. Instead of obsessing over how long it takes, you focus on how faithful God is. Instead of complaining about what hasn't happened yet, you praise him for what he's already done. Instead of shrinking in fear, you expand in expectation. And patience becomes easy when you realize that time is not your enemy. Time is God's tool. Every tick of the clock is moving you closer to what he promised. Faith keeps you from resenting the time it takes. Faith reminds you that God doesn't rush because he is perfect in his timing. He's not late. He's not early. He's right on time. And when you have that assurance deep in your spirit, waiting doesn't feel heavy anymore. It feels holy. And the truth is, impatience is rooted in mistrust. When you get restless, when you feel like you can't take the waiting anymore, it's often because deep down you wonder if God is really going to come through. But when you have complete faith, those doubts lose their power. You stop asking, will he? And start declaring he will. You stop questioning when and start affirming in his time. Faith anchors you so that no matter how strong the winds of delay blow, you will not be moved. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stand still. Stand still in your faith. Stand still in your trust. Stand still and know that he is God. Because patience is not just about waiting for what you want. It's about trusting who he is. And when you know who he is, patience is no longer a burden. It becomes a blessing. And faith gives you vision beyond the moment. It helps you see not just where you are, but where God is taking you. It allows you to look past the discomfort of the present and glimpse the destiny ahead. That vision makes patience easier because you know that what you're waiting for is worth it. You know that what God has promised is greater than what you've lost, bigger than what you've been through, stronger than what you're facing. And so when you have complete faith in God, patience becomes more than just enduring time. It becomes rejoicing in the journey. It becomes trusting in the process. It becomes celebrating the unseen hand of God, guiding every step, orchestrating every detail, and preparing a future that will make the waiting worthwhile. Faith makes patience a joy instead of a job, a strength instead of a struggle, a testimony instead of a trial. Faith doesn't just change how you wait. It changes who you become while you wait. Because waiting with faith builds a strength in you that comfort never could. You don't learn endurance in easy places. You don't develop trust when everything is handed to you instantly. You grow when you are stretched, when you are tested, when you have no choice but to lean on God because nothing else will hold you up. Patience becomes easier when you accept that every trial is a training ground, every delay is a classroom, every unanswered question is an invitation to lean deeper into the one who knows all answers. And faith teaches you that there is purpose in the pause. Sometimes God holds you still, not because he doesn't want to bless you, but because he doesn't want the blessing to break you. He pauses you so you can mature, so you can develop the capacity to handle what he is about to place in your hands. Because if the blessing arrives too soon, it can overwhelm you. But when you have been seasoned through patience, you will not only receive it, you will sustain it. That's why faith makes patience not just bearable, but beautiful. You begin to recognize that the wait is working for you, shaping you, molding you, preparing you for more than you asked for. And there are moments when patience feels like chains, when every part of you wants to run ahead, to force the door open, to make things happen by your own strength. But faith whispers, be still. God's way is better. God's timing is perfect. Don't settle for less because you were too impatient for more. How many people have forfeited God's best because they rushed into what was available instead of waiting for what was ordained? Faith rescues you from that trap. Faith keeps you steady so that you don't fall for what is convenient and miss what is covenant. And the truth is, impatience will always tempt you. It will tempt you to compromise, to take shortcuts, to believe the lie that if it hasn't happened yet, it won't happen at all. But patience anchored in faith keeps you from bowing to that temptation. You don't have to settle for crumbs when a feast is being prepared for you. You don't have to run after people to validate you when God himself has already chosen you. You don't have to manipulate outcomes when the creator of the universe is aligning them on your behalf. That is why patience becomes easy. Not because the wait is short, but because your faith is strong. And patience with faith also protects your peace. When you are impatient, you live in turmoil, constantly comparing, constantly worrying, constantly fearing that time is slipping away. But when you trust God completely, you stop measuring your life by the clock and start measuring it by his care. You stop counting the hours and start counting his promises. You stop chasing after what others have and start trusting that what God has for you cannot be stolen, delayed, or denied. And suddenly peace floods your soul. You can smile while others panic. You can rest while others rush. You can trust while others doubt. And faith doesn't just tell you to wait. It gives you something to do while you wait. It teaches you to prepare. Because if you believe God is going to bless you, you don't sit idly. You get ready. If you believe the rain is coming, you build your ark. If you believe the harvest is near, you get your baskets ready. Faith makes patience active. It turns the waiting room into a workshop. You sharpen your skills. You deepen your prayer life. You cultivate your character. And by the time the blessing shows up, you're not scrambling to handle it. You're ready to embrace it fully. And then let me tell you this, faith will always be tested in the waiting. Anyone can say they believe when the promise is fresh and excitement is high, but real faith is proven in the space between the promise and the manifestation. That's where you find out what you're made of. That's where you discover whether you truly trust God or whether you've just been trusting the timeline you had in your head. And when you press through that testing, patience becomes less about gritting your teeth and more about lifting your hands in surrender. And there is power in learning how to surrender. To surrender doesn't mean you stop believing. It means you stop trying to control what was never in your hands to begin with. It means you let go of the timeline, the method, the expectation of how you thought it should look, and you say, God, however you choose to do it, whenever you choose to do it, I trust you. That kind of surrender produces supernatural patience because you're no longer waiting on a date. You're waiting on God, and God never fails. And faith-driven patience also frees you from fear. Fear screams, you're running out of time. But faith replies, I'm right on schedule with God. Fear says, what if it never happens? But faith answers, if God said it, it will surely come to pass. Fear makes you frantic, but faith makes you firm. And when faith makes you firm, patience is no longer a burden. It becomes a weapon because the enemy can't rush you. He can't shake you. He can't pressure you into moving before your time. You stand your ground, unbothered, unshaken, unwavering, because your confidence is in the one who cannot lie. And think about how patience reveals faith to the world. Anybody can rejoice when things go their way. But when people see you calm in the middle of chaos, steady in the middle of storms, praising in the middle of pain, they start to realize there's something different about you. Patience becomes a testimony. It preaches louder than your words. It tells people this person has seen enough of God's faithfulness to know they can trust him with the unseen. And in that way, your patience becomes a platform for others to believe too. And sometimes God lets the wait stretch longer, not because he is punishing you, but because he wants to use you as an example. He wants your story to inspire someone else who feels like giving up. He wants someone watching you to learn what faith looks like in real time. And though it feels heavy, it is holy. Because through your patience, others catch a glimpse of his power. And faith is not blind optimism. Faith is rooted in the unshakable truth that God is who he says he is. Patience becomes easy when you know that truth deep in your bones. When you know he is faithful, you can wait. When you know he is powerful, you can rest. When you know he is good, you can endure. When you know he is love, you can trust. Every part of who he is gives you reason to hold on. And while the world may call it delay, faith calls it divine timing. While the world may call it waiting, faith calls it working. While the world may call it suffering, faith calls it shaping. And when you embrace that perspective, you don't resent patience. You respect it. You realize patience is the proof of your trust, the evidence of your faith, the training ground of your destiny. And so keep waiting with faith. Keep standing with faith. Keep believing with faith. Because when your faith is complete, your patience will not be fragile. It will be fortified. And no matter how long it takes, you will not just endure the wait. You will emerge from it stronger, wiser, and ready for everything God has prepared for you. Because patience built on faith is not fragile. It is fortified. It is the kind of patience that looks fear in the eye and refuses to bow. It is the kind of patience that takes disappointment and turns it into determination. It is the kind of patience that tells the enemy, you can't shake me. You can't break me. You can't rush me, because I am anchored in something greater than what I see. Faith builds a resilience in your spirit that time cannot erode. It gives you the ability to wait without wavering, to trust without trembling, to stand without surrendering. And when you trust God completely, you learn to see the waiting season not as wasted time, but as sacred time. This is where your roots go deep. This is where your character is refined. This is where your faith becomes unshakable. A tree doesn't become strong because the wind never blew against it. It becomes strong because every storm that tried to knock it down only pushed its roots deeper. And so it is with you. Every moment of waiting is pushing your faith deeper, anchoring you more securely in the soil of God's promises. That's why patience becomes easier, because you understand that even when nothing seems to be moving on the surface, growth is happening beneath the ground. And patience forged by faith also frees you from the trap of comparison. One of the greatest enemies of patience is the temptation to measure your life against someone else's timeline. You see others progressing. You see doors opening for them, and you wonder why yours remains shut. But faith teaches you that your story is not their story. Your timing is not their timing. Your purpose is not their purpose. Faith reminds you that what God has for you is tailor-made for you, and it will come in its appointed season. You don't have to envy what others receive, because you know your portion is secure. That revelation makes patience easier, because you stop watching their harvest and start tending your own field. And faith teaches you to celebrate even in the middle of the process. You don't have to wait until everything is perfect to give thanks. You don't have to wait until the promise is fulfilled to praise. When you trust God fully, you learn to rejoice while the seed is still underground, while the doors are still closed, while the answer is still on the way. That joy in the waiting is what keeps your spirit alive. It's what keeps you from giving in to discouragement. It's what reminds you that the blessing is not just in the destination, it's also in the journey. And make no mistake, patience without faith will always wear thin. If your patience is built only on your own willpower, it will eventually crumble under pressure. You'll grow weary, you'll get frustrated, you'll feel like giving up. But when patience is built on faith, it has a supernatural strength. It's not your strength holding you, it's God's. That's why you can smile when others can't understand why you're not breaking down. That's why you can rest when others are running themselves ragged. That's why you can stand tall when others think you should have collapsed. Faith gives patience the stamina to endure what flesh alone cannot. And faith-driven patience also teaches you to trust God with the unseen. Because let's be honest, sometimes what you see doesn't match what you believe. Sometimes the evidence around you seems to contradict the promise within you. But that's exactly where patience is needed most. Patience says, I will not let my eyes dictate my faith. I will not let circumstances define my confidence. I will not let the visible world shake my belief in an invisible God. And when you walk in that kind of faith, patience becomes easier, because you are no longer bound to what you can see. You are anchored to what you believe. And waiting with faith is never passive. It is active expectation. It's waking up each day with the belief that today could be the day. It's preparing your heart and your life as if the blessing is already on its way. It's speaking life into situations that look dead. It's sowing seeds of obedience even when the ground looks dry. Active patience is not about folding your arms and doing nothing. It's about positioning yourself so that when God opens the door, you're ready to walk through it. And there will be times when the wait feels long, when the silence feels deafening, when the night feels unending. But patience fueled by faith tells you that the night will not last forever, that silence does not mean absence, that delay is not defeat. Faith tells you that joy comes in the morning, even if the morning hasn't dawned yet. Faith tells you that promises may tarry, but they will surely come. Faith tells you that the God who started the work in you will be faithful to complete it. And when you hold on to that, patience becomes less about enduring pain and more about embracing hope. And patience also becomes easier when you realize that waiting is not just about what you will receive, it's about who you will become. Because the truth is, the blessing is not the only outcome of the wait. The greater outcome is the transformation happening inside of you. The person you become in the waiting is stronger, wiser, more resilient, more compassionate, more faithful. And when you finally step into the blessing, you'll carry not just the gift, but the growth. You'll carry not just the promise, but the perseverance. That's why faith makes patience so powerful. It reveals that the wait itself is a gift. And sometimes God holds you in the waiting season because he wants to show the world what faith looks like in motion. People are watching you. They are watching how you handle disappointment, how you navigate delay, how you respond to silence. And when they see you steady, when they see you unshaken, when they see you praising through the process, it becomes a testimony louder than any words you could ever speak. Your patience becomes a sermon. Your endurance becomes evidence. Your faith becomes a beacon of hope to you. Oh, those who are struggling with their own waiting seasons. And here's the truth. Patience doesn't mean you won't feel frustration. It doesn't mean you won't have moments of doubt. It doesn't mean you won't wrestle with questions. But faith gives you the ability to keep moving forward even when emotions try to pull you back. Faith steadies your heart when your mind is swirling with uncertainty. Faith holds your hand when your strength is slipping. Faith tells you it's okay to feel weary, but don't give up. It's okay to cry, but don't quit. It's okay to question, but don't stop trusting. And the beauty of patience built on faith is that it grows sweeter the longer you walk with God. Because the more you see his faithfulness in your life, the easier it becomes to wait the next time. You remember the times he came through before, and it strengthens you to believe he will come through again. Every testimony fuels your patience. Every answered prayer reinforces your trust. Every deliverance deepens your confidence. That's why patience becomes easier. It is carried by a history of God's faithfulness. And so, when you find yourself in a season of waiting, don't despise it. Don't rush it. Don't curse it. Instead, embrace it as part of the process. Embrace it as the evidence that God is preparing something worth waiting for. Embrace it as the opportunity to deepen your faith, to expand your vision, to strengthen your spirit. Because when you have complete faith in God, patience is not a prison. It's a pathway. It is the road that leads you from promise to fulfillment, from hope to harvest, from prayer to praise. Because when you have complete faith in God, patience is not a prison. It's a pathway that may not always be smooth, but it is purposeful. A pathway that may wind through valleys and climb steep hills, but it always leads to destiny. Faith allows you to see that every step you take, even the slow ones, even the ones that feel like they're going nowhere, are steps being orchestrated by the master of time. And when you grasp that truth, patience becomes easier because you know you are not wandering, you are being led. And faith makes you understand that patience is not about sitting still. It is about moving steadily. Even when progress is invisible, you keep walking. Even when the door is shut, you keep knocking. Even when the ground looks dry, you keep sowing. Faith-driven patience says, I won't stop just because it hasn't happened yet. I will keep pressing forward because I believe that what God has spoken is still alive, still active, still working its way into my reality. That is why patience is powerful, because it keeps you in motion when everything in your flesh wants to quit. And patience requires perspective, and faith gives you that perspective. Without faith, all you see is the closed door. But with faith, you see the hand preparing the key. Without faith, all you see is the desert. But with faith, you see rivers springing forth in dry places. Without faith, all you see is the pit. But with faith, you see the palace waiting at the other end. Perspective shifts everything. And when your perspective is shaped by faith, you stop resenting the process and start respecting it. And sometimes patience feels heavy because we confuse waiting with inactivity. But waiting in faith is never wasted time. Waiting in faith is working time. It's the season where God shapes you, stretches you, and equips you. Faith makes you understand that while you are waiting on the promise, God is working on the person. He's working on you. He's teaching you lessons in silence, building strength in your spirit, and equipping you with wisdom for what's ahead. If he gave it to you too soon, you wouldn't have the capacity to handle it. But through patience, your capacity expands. And faith gives you the courage to believe that what looks delayed is not denied. Delay is often God's way of protecting you from premature exposure, because sometimes the place you're praying for is not yet ready for you, or maybe you're not yet ready for it. And so he makes you wait, not because he's forgotten you, but because he loves you too much to release you too soon. That's why patience is easier when your faith is firm. You stop seeing the delay as punishment and start seeing it as preparation. And there is a maturity that only waiting can bring. There is a wisdom that only time can teach. There is a strength that only patience can produce. Faith makes you welcome that growth because you realize that the blessing is not just about what you will receive, but about who you will be when you receive it. The person who walks into the promise is not the same person who first prayed for it. You will be stronger, wiser, more grateful, more faithful, and that transformation is as much a part of the blessing as the breakthrough itself. And patience built on faith also silences the voice of panic. Panic tells you, hurry, you're falling behind. Time is slipping away. You're missing your chance. But faith tells you, be still. You cannot miss what God has marked as yours. What he has ordained for you will find you in his timing. And when you hold on to that truth, patience becomes easier because the fear of missing out is replaced by the assurance of God's providence. And faith reminds you that God doesn't work by deadlines. He works by destiny. He doesn't measure by your watch. He measures by his will. That's why some doors won't open until the exact moment they're supposed to, no matter how hard you push. That's why some prayers won't be answered until the season is right, no matter how loudly you cry. And that's why some blessings won't arrive until the stage is set, no matter how ready you feel. Patience is easier when you trust that timing belongs to God and his timing is flawless. And when you look back over your life, you'll realize that some of the things you once rushed God for would have broken you if he gave them to you then. Some of the people you begged him to keep in your life would have destroyed your destiny if he let them stay. Some of the opportunities you cried over when they slipped away would have been prisons disguised as blessings. And yet, in his wisdom, he made you wait. He made you endure. He made you trust. And now, looking back, you see that patience protected you. That's why faith makes patience easier, because it helps you look at the past and remember, if he got it right before, he'll get it right again. And patience with faith also teaches you endurance in seasons of silence. There will be days when heaven feels quiet, when prayers seem unanswered, when the heavens seem like brass. But silence is not abandonment. Silence is strategy. Silence is God saying, I am still here. I am still working. I am still faithful, but I am building something in you that noise cannot produce. Faith gives you the strength to sit in the silence and still believe, to endure the quiet without losing confidence, to keep walking even when you can't hear the footsteps of God beside you. That endurance is what separates temporary faith from tested faith. And faith also fuels patience by reminding you that God's promises don't have expiration dates. Just because it hasn't happened yet doesn't mean it's not going to happen. Just because years have passed doesn't mean the word God spoke over your life has lost its power. Time cannot cancel his word. Circumstances cannot void his plan. People cannot block his purpose. And when you understand that, patience becomes easier because you stop worrying about how long it takes and start resting in the fact that it will surely come. And patience in faith turns your waiting room into a worship room. You begin to realize that the same God you are waiting on is the same God worthy of praise right now. You don't wait for the miracle to worship. You worship while the miracle is in motion. And that worship fuels your patience, because when you shift your focus from what you lack to who he is, your heart finds peace, your spirit finds strength, your patience finds power. And faith-driven patience also prepares you to steward blessings well, because if you've waited for it, you won't waste it. If you've prayed for it, you'll protect it. If you've endured for it, you'll embrace it with gratitude. Waiting seasons teach you not to take blessings lightly. They teach you to handle the promise with care. They teach you to remember that what you're receiving is not just an answer to your prayer, but a manifestation of God's faithfulness. And that awareness makes every blessing sweeter, every breakthrough richer, every miracle more meaningful. So when life puts you in a holding pattern, don't despise it. When doors seem slow to open, don't lose heart. When the answers seem delayed, don't give up. Have faith, and let that faith transform your patience. Because patience with faith is not empty. It is full of purpose. It is not weak. It is strong. It is not wasted. It is working. And if you keep trusting, if you keep believing, if you keep waiting with faith, you will see that the promise was worth every moment of the process.